next we have Mr. Abhinav Rajput, co-founder and CEO of Nao Spirits and Beverage, talking about his homegrown craft gin brand Greater Than that has put India on the map in the alcohol beverage sector.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming out today. Um, the good thing is, I'm going to talk about some gin right now. The sad bit is, you won't get anything to drink right now, at least, but hopefully a little later in the evening. Um, just giving a little context, I've been told not to talk about our brands too much, but I'll try and give you a little insight into the category and the industry as well. But uh, if you can look at the screens, you'll probably be able to. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay. So that's us. We call Now Spirits, and whoever knows about our brands, is that fine? Okay. Whoever knows about our brands would probably be able to identify those two bottles in there. But those illustrations, the one on the right is called Greater Than, which is essentially a London dry gin. The one on the left is Hapusha, which is a contemporary style sipping gin. We call it a Himalayan dry gin. So before I actually get into some details about gin, about the category, and about what's happening and what we do. Um, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thanks. Yeah. So at least my association of gin uh, went back to college. And that point, what we were actually drinking, I don't know how many people would know about this or not, but is something called Blue Ribbon. Uh, that's something that we could afford. 200 rupees a bottle, uh, easily available, and that was unfortunately, that was our association of gin in terms of drinking gin back in the day. And what was available next to that was the imported usual suspects like Bombay Sapphire or Gordon's or Beefeater, and they still continue to be leading brands. They've been around for decades, and are great quality products. But back then, there was nothing in the middle, and that's where we found opportunity in 2016 to really come up with something which was bridging that gap and essentially cater to the larger audience, and hence one of our brands, Greater Than, was born. But having said that, just diving straight into what is happening right now, right? Everyone's talking about gin. Why is it so popular? Why is it becoming a go-to beverage for a lot of people? What really is happening? Um, Referring to the gin spectrum, say possibly 10 years ago, 12 years ago, there was obviously the cold compounded flavored gins like Blue Ribbon, and then there obviously what we talked about right now is Bombay Sapphire, Gordon's, Beefeater, Tanqueray as well. So where do we fit in, and where really the action is happening currently is what we refer to as the craft gin space. Uh, what really is craft? I mean, if I can actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to open this up with everyone, but just to get a sense, and if anyone wants to take a dig at this, what really is craft? I mean, in terms of spirits, in terms of premium spirits, in terms of just craft by itself. What really is the space, and why am I asking that question, and why am I raising that question? I'm going to obviously give my take on that. Is because that is what is globally leading the gin space, and that's what's really kind of utilizing that, and why are people really relating to that? But to simply put it, there is no definition to craft. It is so relative. It is almost like an art form, right? Everyone would have a different definition or an explanation to how they really define their art. But how we sort of look at this is is slightly differently. If you could help me with the next slide, please. Yeah. So it's really not the liquid. It's really not the product. It's really not the bottle. It's really not the packaging, right? Maybe some of it is, yes, definitely the story, the brand, but it's really how we do it, right? And that's really the journey to it, and that's what we enjoyed. Unlike there being an assembly line, or there being machines and equipment putting bottles out there and making the liquid. For us, the biggest difference here is the human element in there. We literally have our distillers really every day, and probably they're doing that right now in the distillery in Goa. Is they are chopping up those botanicals. They are literally going out there and sourcing those botanicals from local markets, and really getting in there and peeling them off and chopping them off, and as per the recipe, loading that up in our pot still, and going ahead and making that gin. So there are individuals involved in this process, and that's what really makes it craft. Having said that, there is obviously variation in quality, because sourcing raw mango in the month of April, or sourcing raw mango in the month of December, would definitely have its own variations in taste, in terms of quality, in terms of flavor, and that's where really the distillation process and the craft really comes in, to minimize that variation for the consumer when you actually get liquid to lips. But having said that, every batch is unique, right? You go back to your favorite restaurant to have that dish. For you, it's the same, but there's obviously a variation to it. How your ingredients are sourced, how the chef is really working on this, who's really making it. There is a variation to it, but there is quality, and there is uniqueness to it in every batch that we make. And honestly, that really is craft. And that's what's really kind of adding to. Second. And that's what's something really that's adding to the space right now in terms of what's happening within gin. Having said that, if you can move on to the next one. Okay. The American Distilling Institute, which is obviously based out of the US, defines craft very differently, right? And we have a slightly contradictory take on this, but they define anything craft linked to the volumes and the production of what you're really putting out there, and which is defined very specifically by them, is under 100,000 cases produced per annum. And in the alcohol industry, the metric is 9-liter cases of liquid, and referring to that being 100,000 cases in the year. We have slightly different take on that, because we've seen brands like Hendrix, that everyone's popularly aware of, reach 1 million cases, and they still call themselves craft. They still have individuals getting into the distilleries and really making this gin every day. So our take on that is that craft really has nothing to do with scale. Craft on the other hand should have access to more and more people, and that is what we're typically seeing as of now, what is happening in the world. And to give you a little sense, India as a market, if you could move to the next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so to give you a sense, if you can look at the screens and look at this graph of this is global gin consumption. And if you see the growth of gin, why it actually starts from 1990 is when who kind of took the lead in this was Bombay Sapphire, and they set up the distillery in 1986, 87, and if you see this data is 1990 onwards, which is approximately about 3 decades ago, and this is where the gin revolution, the gin space was started off. Having said that, if you see there's basically a stagnant growth going on almost till 2009, 2010. And what really happened at that point when gin globally was kind of taking lead was essentially the UK. Any guesses on which is the largest gin market in the world? Anyone in the market? Close. But no. No, not at all. They're possibly right now the biggest tequila and mezcal market, but not gin. But anyone? You're getting there, but it's the Philippines of all the places, right? It's tiny, but in terms of volume, they consume the largest amount of gin in the world. And that is they have their own blue ribbon in their region, and it's called Saint Miguel's, and that's the reason why it is the largest market by volume. But when it comes to the value of the market in itself by gin, it is the UK. The UK started the whole gin trend back in the day, and India as a market tends to kind of take their gin trends from the UK. So next slide, please. Yeah. So if you look at that, we take all our alco-bev trends from the UK. It's not just gin. It's to do with single malts. It's to do with rums. It's to do with tequila. It's to do with mezcals. There are a lot of premium spirits spirit trends that we look at the UK for. And what we're actually seeing right now today happening in India is what happened in the UK about 12 years ago. So if you look at, I have to give you an example, there were about 70 gin distilleries in 2010-11 in the UK. And in over the span of the last decade, we've reached the 700 plus distilleries that exist in the UK currently. And that is the kind of growth that we've seen in the space. And that's the kind of growth that we're expecting in India as well. Currently, that's the highest value of the market that exists in the world. We're looking at a $3 billion plus market of gin itself that lies ahead in currently as of 2021-22, and that's the UK. The rise in the UK also happened in 2011-12 because of a brand called Sipsmith. If anyone's heard of Sipsmith gin, they were the first craft gin to set up base in the UK in 2008-2009. And they did something very, very revolutionary, because they went out and took on the legislation. There was no space for craft distillers to exist and craft brands to exist in the space. So they went up against the government and really got permissions to really get people in to set up their own distilleries, and that is where really the growth kind of took place globally for gin. If you could move to the next slide. Okay, giving you a little snapshot of how alco-bev is in India. We all know, nothing surprising. India is a brown spirits market, very, very dominated by whiskey, rum, followed by possibly beer. If you see, we are a massive, massive business. The top three selling whiskeys in the world come out of India. Any idea what those brands are? Absolutely. So they're number 2 now, by the way. McDowell's has become number 1 by selling the maximum number of cases in the world, which is massive. Yes, obviously the number of people in this country helped doing that, but yeah, that's how it is. So if you look at the sizing of the market, we're talking about a 556 million 9-liter cases coming out of India in the overall alco-bev space. About 40% of that is the premium category, which actually is a very, very healthy number as of 2021, which was possibly maybe 10% or 15% of that in 2012, 2013. Having said that, if you see, gin is a tiny percentage of that, right? 1.3 million out of the 556 million is barely negligible, but that definitely includes the value products, what we talked about, Blue Ribbon and the works. Still have about a $2 to $3 value per bottle kind of association for the consumer, and hence it stays mass. But out of that, the premium gins, if you see, is still again very, very small. But if you see the growth that's happened, if you could move to the next slide, that is just a very, very high level indication to trend in the last 4 years. If you see the graph on top is the growth for premium gins. If you see, it's obviously 2020 was not good for anyone, but if you see the trajectory and the growth, it is extremely growing at a very fast rate. From going from about 40,000 cases, it's grown by 5 times. And if you see the value space, drastically decreasing, and the trend that we see in there is people are looking at better options. People are more aware of what they're drinking. They are willing to go out there and spend that extra buck to get something which is quality, and that's obviously that graph shows the trend and pattern in premium gin. but that is what is being seen in the larger spaces as well, like whiskey and rum. And if you've recently seen brands like larger companies like Diageo and Pernod Ricard, they are offloading their mass brands, which is really their bread and butter, but they are kind of leasing them out to other players and focusing on craft, and focusing on premiumness, and that's where really the next 10 to 15 years of the industry lies. So yeah, I mean, that's how it is. And if you to give you a little sense, if you could just move to the next slide. This is data as of March 21. The top two brands in there is us, but if you see the bottom section is where really the market was kind of consolidated when it came to gin. There's obviously Bombay Sapphire, Tanqueray, Gordon's, and then there was Beefeater. Those were the known devils in the market. And we came in very, very recently in 2017 and 18 with the two brands. It's still early days. If you saw the trend in the UK, how things are, what's been happening, this is really early days. We're looking at a massive growth that could sort of come our way in the next 10 to 12 years in the space of gin, and otherwise as well in the premium spirit space. Having said that, we started with you. We were India's first craft gin distillery in 2017. There are about 11 right now that exist in the span of 3 years, 4 years itself, and possibly another probably conceptualized right now as we speak, because Goa seems to be this place everyone's really running for these distilleries. Having said that, if I could just give you a little glance of what we make. We go to the next slide, please. That is our distillery in Goa, just to give you a little sense. That lovely shiny pot still there, her name's Agatha. Agatha is from Hungary, and in Hungarian, Agatha means good-hearted, and that's how we've named her. So both our gins come out of that pot still there. It's a 1,000-liter pot still. It looks tiny. It can do a lot. And yeah, if you could just move on to the next slide, I'll just give you a little sense. That's one of our gins. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this or have seen this around. We're a classic London dry gin as of now in 12 states in India, and exporting to about 13 odd countries. And yeah, move on to the next one. That's the other gin we have. It's called Hapusha, a premium segment gin. The only and the first gin in the world which is actually made with juniper that comes from the Himalayas, and that's what really sets it apart in terms of the flavor profile. And yeah, that's where we are. So that's what I had today, and yeah, open for questions. Anyone? Yes, please. So my wife's grandmother's 83 years old. She drinks greater than every day, to give you a little sense. But to sort of kind of talk about that, it definitely when we started off in 17 and 18, it was definitely consolidated in that 25 to 30 age group. I'm not allowed to say it below 25 for whatever reasons, but it's definitely 25 and 30 in that space, consolidated over there. But no, I think it's each and every event that we host for our gins, and we go to these bars and we go to these restaurants, every year we see there's definitely a larger group, right? It is that 25 30 range is definitely, I would say, 45 50 years old individuals having a nice gin and tonic or a cocktail is definitely coming up more and more. So it is, and surprisingly, I mean, we were talking to someone recently. What is changing is, surprisingly, people are moving from beer to gin, right? So which is a very interesting data point for us as well to see. It started off with people moving from vodka to gin, right? Because there's a more flavored option. But yes, it's happening. Obviously, it's very difficult to change a Indian whiskey consumer to gin. But definitely the popularity is kind of really on the up, and new distilleries opening up and new brands coming up. They're definitely helping spread the word for gin. I mean, see, we were the first ones to set up shop in India, but we were not beer or whiskey or rum, right? That India, I think, everyone in the school as well know what a whiskey is and how it's supposed to be had, or how a beer is. Gin was something that there was a responsibility on us to even go out there and even educate people about the category. So we were first movers. That's the good and bad side of it, right? So with newer players coming in, that's happening, right? So they are helping us educate the consumer about gin and the category and how it should exist. But definitely, yes, it's definitely not age specific or focus of the younger consumer anymore. They definitely help us spread the word, but it's definitely across the board. Yeah. Is there? Um, See, I'll tell you, the Japanese gin that are coming around right now are essentially all London dry gins or London dry style gins. To give you a little sense, so one of our gins is also a London dry gin, which is a classic, clean gin, and typically that was set based by the imported UK brands that we're talking about. It is not. It is more of an association. Let me put it slightly differently. There is no Japanese element to that gin. It just is so that a London dry gin is coming out of our distillery as well, and someone sitting in Italy is consuming it and is talking about a London dry gin coming out of India. It's more of the association, but London dry gins have a certain specification in which how they're made, right? They have a very citrus forward, clean, fresh taste profile to it, and it's made a certain way. And it's not really it's a style, but it's also a certification, right? So there is it's for a more aware consumer, that's a safe space to be in, right? So gin is on the rise, as I refer to the data as well, and more distilleries in the world are coming out with quality products. And Japan happens to be another country that's actually doing that. They're known for their distilleries. They're known for their single malts, obviously, premium single malts, and they have the capability. So that's how it is. I mean, there are a few that are good ones that come out from there, but yeah, I mean, if you see Indian gins that way in terms of the craft space, and not just our brands but otherwise as well, they have their own taste profile, or they have a more dominant point to how they're flavored, right? And we are the only London resin that comes out of South Asia, which is quite surprising because there is so much going on here, and one London dry gin which has certification and is coming out of here is a little surprising. But yeah, to go back to your question, they're great gins, but it's just geography and yeah. We're done. Sorry. Yeah. Hmm. Right. Indian style gin. What do you mean by Indian style gin? Right. So we do, and which is the other gin. It's called Hapusha, right? Hapusha literally translates. So Hapusha means juniper in Sanskrit, right? And that's literally like the starting point to it, right? We could have made anything, and a lot of people who are really taking in the Indian spices into the flavor profile, right? And there are lots of them out there. There's Stranger and Sons, there's Pomori, there are all these brands, right? They are bringing in that Indian element. And if you turn around the bottle and see the label, most of those botanicals you would probably find in your kitchen, right? And you would probably use in your everyday cooking. A lot of people don't know about this. There are two ingredients that every gin requires for it to be called gin. One is obviously juniper, and the other is coriander seeds. We probably have it 3 times a day here in India, right? So there are Indian elements to all these gins that are coming out of India, and I mean we build a product just around that, and yeah, I mean if you actually, I'll be happy to sort of take this with the outsider and give you a little more about Hapusha and how the stories come about. But yeah, I mean it's all Indian forward, and Hapusha tends to be when we export as well, tends to be the face of Indian gins for us as well. I mean, no one's interested in a classic London dry gin, say for example in the Europe or the UK, because they're spoiled for choice. So what really exciting is for them is a story which is India forward. Yeah. It was invented in India by the British. People were dying of malaria and they needed quinine, and that's why they discovered tonic. And obviously, if they're not going to have tonic by itself, so they added some gin to that, and that's how the gin tonic was discovered. Yeah, but sorry, I've been told that to end the session, but happy to take more questions outside. I mean, okay, thank you, thanks everyone. That's it.